the screen up for you. Hopefully you can all see the presentation pack, and we're going to talk through it. I'll just put this onto a slideshow. Okay, Rachel.
Okay, so good evening. I'm Rachel O'Donnell. I'm the HR manager for WM Donald. We are a civil engineering and construction company based here in the Northeast. I have been in HR now for over 30 years, so that's obviously showing my age now. I didn't know I'd be sharing that this evening. And I have been at WM Donald now for 3.5 years and had the privilege of working with Craig as our health and safety manager at WM Donald for 2.5 years.
Yeah, and as Rachel says, I'm Craig Hunter. I'm the Director of CWH Safety. So I worked with Rachel up until about 18 months ago. I've now set up my own company now, offering consultancy services and working on projects. Prior to that, a lot of civils, construction and offshore industry background as well. So tonight, we're going to take you through a session called Wellbeing in the Workplace. And watch this thing move on. Bear with me while I do this.
Yeah, great.
Got it. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Rachel. So yeah, tonight's session, we're just going to talk about a mental health programme that we implemented here at WM Donald in our time together as working. We want to just outline some of the challenges that we had building a mental health programme and share how we overcame a lot of the challenges that were involved in that. And really, if we're honest, we want to inspire others to really step up a little bit on mental health and consider, you know, what you're doing in your workplaces. Are you actually doing enough? You know, so hopefully you'll see that where we started from, we didn't think we were doing enough and we had to do a lot more. And hopefully we can share that learning with you. As Rachel said at the start, there'll be a question and answer at the end. We're happy to take any questions as we go through. Okay, so where we began on our journey with a mental health campaign, I think the important thing really to stress here is that it wasn't an HR's job, it wasn't a HSEQ job. We both felt it was our job in the dual roles. You know, so we worked together on this collaboratively without any question. Rachel and I are very fortunate, we had a very good working relationship, you know, so it wasn't difficult to do. But I understand some companies that can be really difficult to do, but I would encourage anybody, if they take anything from tonight, always work together on these things. There's so much you can learn from each other. So what we started off with was the realization that mental health in construction, civil engineering, you can imagine is very, very macho. It's very much male-dominated culture. They don't like to do it. And what we kind of found was, when we're going to our client sites, you see the poster on the wall that says, yeah, speak to somebody, talk here, do things. So what's behind the campaign? What is actually behind that? And when we kind of looked at it, there wasn't really an awful lot there. You know, it's great, but if you're going to ask for information, you have to be prepared to deal with it. So we set these objectives to address the male domination, the macho culture we have here. Look at the stigma of mental health. You know, at that point, there's nothing different in that than anybody else would have in delivering a mental health programme. But then to get the workforce engaged, to create safe spaces. This was really important to us, to have safe spaces to discuss mental health. You know, if you can't talk about it at work, you know, there's something really far wrong. And then we looked to identify and appoint mental health first aiders. So there's no great shocks in what our objectives were to do that. And then we just moved on to use our own combined knowledge. So Rachel's, as you said, 30 years in this game. I've had similar amount of time in this game as well. You know, and we looked at, you know, across the business. So is it across the levels of where the stress and anxiety is? Is it going to be the new apprentices? What's the issues to them that are very different from the middle managers, from the supervisor? So there's a lot of different ways to look at it, rather than just sort of saying, we've got a company, we want mental health, we're going to badge them all the same and put it out that way. So we've put a lot of effort into that part of the project. We set to work, we just rolled up our sleeves, you know, and we're really fortunate because I think anybody who knows WM Donald knows they've got a very good health and safety culture, you know, so we want to add to that, but it wasn't without its challenges.
And I mean, our challenges, and this is where I'm going to be open and honest, was actually getting it across to the board and the senior team, because again, it was not out there. They didn't actually see there was a problem for us to actually deal with. So we were challenged, you know, quite strongly from the senior team. They were asking what is actually required, you know, why was this suddenly a new risk? Because it wasn't 6 months ago. You know, Rachel and Craig have just come into the business. Yeah. Why are you bringing this up now? Will this result in increased absence? will we actually lose people if we're going to open I always heard this phrase throughout this when we were delivering it, are we going to open up a can of worms?
Yeah.
So they did challenge us. They were asking, will it affect productivity? Will there be time off the park for people obviously talking about it? And what will be the overall cost? So how we overcome those challenges, we made sure that we did our homework and did the research.
Absolutely.
And then we outlined the moral argument and tied it into the already strong family values. You know, if anybody knows WM Donald, they do have this strong ethos and family values. From there, we drafted our first edition of the mental health newsletter, circulated it to the board and the senior team, so they felt they were being part of the journey and they were giving us feedback on what we were obviously trying to propose. From there, we then had to deliver to the board and the senior team the actual mental health, our first drop-in workshop that we proposed that we were going to go and deliver to all our teams out on site. And again, it was critiqued and we took that feedback on board and adapted it to get it across the line.
Okay.
I then had to provide the assurance to the senior team that the HR reporting, they would see improvements, because I knew that we would as soon as we actually rolled it out. But this just gave us enough to get that approval from the senior team to go out, do the newsletters, and then do the sessions actually out on site.
Absolutely. And as Rachel says, we left that meeting, you know, a bit battered, a bit bruised. But I think what really came across in that meeting is our passion to make this happen, you know, and that was really what they said. Okay, we're going to let you run with this, but let's see where it goes. That's as far as we got with that first part. So we started looking at the rollout of the programme, and then we started thinking about other things that we need to do, making sure that the basic needs of all the employees were sort of met. And it sounds like a really simple thing to do. You know, well, why hasn't everybody got their training that they need, or their appraisal done, or their personal developments in place? These are really important things that people in this company, we all know by name. You know, so we don't want people thinking that somebody's getting something that somebody else has, or they're being left out. So getting a level playing field to start with was really tough going, and all credit to Rachel on this part. You know, this is mainly the HR type stuff that had to be done, but obviously with you know, my support to sort of get it through as well. But we made sure that the going an extra mile, the long service awards, making sure people were recognised for their contribution. We increased the OK Health provision as well to include mental health. You know, so again, that was a big financial commitment from the company at a very early stage in the process. And then the socially inclusive events that we had, you know, so we have Christmas parties. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we wanted to make sure that people who perhaps didn't stay close to the depot could get to. So we were people working in Inverness, Dundee, Perth, all the way up the east coast of Scotland, but making sure that they were involved in the process. And then, we started doing our monthly newsletter called Healthier Lives. That was edited by Rachel and I, put in key things every month. Yeah, obviously there was things that Rachel would lean towards on the HR side. I would obviously put some things in about how good your mental health was to help with physical accidents in the workplace as well. And then, yeah, it went really well. And again, we don't want just to do like a mail drop, shove these things out, they go on the notice board, and somebody goes, well, actually, when we went around to the site, we could see them on the notice boards, talk to the boys on the site. Have you read this edition? Yeah, that was a good article on XYZ. And we had the follow-ups with these things as we went around. But during the planning of that, you know, our mental health workshop, so we were getting ready for everything to get going. The base was kind of set, if you like, and then very tragically, everything changed.
Yeah, as Craig says, in 2022, suddenly, unexpectedly, we lost a friend and a colleague who took his own life actually on site. Vitaly was a skilled labourer at WM Donald. He'd been with us for 3 years. He was a husband, a father, 2 young children, 11-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. I'd actually seen him 3 months prior to him taking his own life, and he was at the WM Donald Family Day, and I spent time with his family. To the outside world, Vitaly had everything: family, nice house, secure job, and then obviously this rocked us to the core. Myself and Craig had to be there to support Vitaly, Vitaly's wife and family, again because she was an international, so her English wasn't all that great. Craig had to step in and liaise with the police because again, it took them 3 to 4 days to actually formally identify him, and she had to wait, during that time. So we both stepped in and supported her throughout this awful time. But then we had our colleagues on site. We had to support our colleagues on site, and obviously support everybody within the WM Donald family. And for me, it was actually also controlling all the communication, because there was so much rumours and speculation, and going back to they hadn't formally identified Vitaly, it was so difficult. But again, we were supporting everybody, the senior team, Vitaly's family, our employees, but Craig supported me. I supported Craig, because we were all going through this awful time.
Yeah, as Rachel says, I mean, it absolutely rocked us. I mean, sometimes we think, we can see suicide coming. That we had an absolute bolt from the blue. This was a fantastic young lad, and a tragic situation that we ended up with. But the hardest part, obviously, was dealing with his family. But looking after ourselves, trying to keep the job going, and not being able to communicate what we wanted to communicate to the business because of the delays in the official side of things. That was really tough, really tough. But the bottom line on that slide there tells you all. The support for Rachel and I to do that work was unlimited. It didn't matter what it cost. It didn't matter what hours we worked, where we went, who we spoke to. You need to get this done, guys, and you do it properly. And that was the bit that moved us from just getting permission to do a mental health program to actually, we blooming well need one here. And what else are we going to do, guys? So we got back to the job, back to the day job. We had a regroup after that, Rachel and I, obviously, to see what we're thinking about with our mental health company. And the company objective was completely revised to include to ensure that mental health is given the same consideration as physical well-being. Now, that sounds like a nice thing to have in your business. To actually get it is not easy. It's not simple. But actually, you're getting board commitment. Out of a tragedy, we will get some cooperation and some good to come of this. But we really want to smash this stigma around mental health. And between Rachel and I mean, it was like the unwritten rule. We're not just going to smash the stigma around mental health. We're going to smash the stigma around suicide. We're going to start talking about suicide in this workplace openly with as many people as we have to, for as long as we have to, to make sure it's known that this is a safe place that people can work. So we did that. We did a lot of things, as you'd imagine, in the aftermath of such a tragedy. So we went back to our programme, and then we got involved with the Lighthouse Club, Andy's Man's Club, great organisations with fantastic support networks, excellent information, that we could utilise. We issued the campaign materials, confidential lines to everybody. We were around all sites speaking to the guys on the job. It was a pretty intense time, and if I'm perfectly honest, I look back on it now, even 2 years ago, it's like a bit of a blur. At the time, it really was. Really, you're in autopilot doing this kind of work, but it had to be done. But then we planned and delivered an employee engagement day that focused on mental health. So in January, when everybody came back from Christmas, everybody's a bit down, they've had a tough time, they've had a great time, and it's now back to work. And then we talked about mental health, we talked about personal finance, job security, back to basics. Have you got everything you need to be happy in your work, guys? Do you need it? Here's some information on it. Come and speak to us afterwards. It was incredible. We went on to include mental health questions in our staff surveys. That was a first. We hadn't sort of thought about, well, we actually thought about how we were going to measure this, and we'll talk about the statistics later on. But actually to be open and bold and talk to our guys about, through the staff surveys, are we doing enough? What can we do more? What is it you guys need? And then we had a full review of the workplace stress risk assessment. So I did that, obviously. We already had the kind of standard one, and then we went through it with a lot more detail. And then, we'll talk about that in a second, but then we went on to the mental health first aiders. In the response to Vitaly's suicide, everybody in the company went, I'll be a mental health first aider. I'll be a mental health first aider. I want to do it. I want to help. And it was absolutely overwhelming. It was fantastic. But Rachel and I had a real job in our hands. There's only certain types of people can really do that job and really do it effectively. So you have to be very sort of, thanks but no thanks in some occasions. So the guys who we did select, it was the best people for the roles. We couldn't have people who were, in fact, one of our directors wanted to be a mental health first aider, and it's not the right person to do that role. across his peer group, absolutely. Down to the staff, no, not a chance. So we did all these kind of things to reinforce what our key objectives were going to be.
So then from there, myself and Craig actually went out and did the mental health drop-in workshop. So again, touching on it's you need to make sure that you're getting the right people to actually do these drop-in sessions, because throughout it, myself and Craig did create this non-judgmental space where employees could talk to us openly about their mental health, and they did. And we also spoke openly about Vitaly and his suicide and the impact that it had of everybody that worked at WM Donald. We gave them opportunities to learn more about the confidential services, and Craig touched on that about Lighthouse Club and Andy's Man Club, and we've got our own occupational health provider. But the Lighthouse Club, they're absolutely amazing, and we're partnered up with them, and we only have to give them a small annual subscription. So if anything, please go and have a look at the Lighthouse Club, because they deliver a fantastic service and have continued to do so over the last 3 years. We shared their own experience, and I did find a lot of individuals open up, so that it really is key, whoever you select to do that, because the things that we learned about individuals really opened my eyes. And it was a bit shocking to start with, but the more sessions we did, the more people were actually opening up. We encouraged them all to open up and discuss suicide. And as a direct result of these sessions, I have had numerous employees come forward and discuss with myself. And again, we'll go back to the stats about the mental health first aiders. But if someone has said to me in 2022, Rachel, you will have weekly discussions with employees about their mental health and their suicidal thoughts, I would have been, no, not a chance. We don't have an issue or a problem. If people did, they would speak to me. This allowed them to have that platform to actually speak to us about it.
Yeah, and just as Rachel says, when the people are sharing their own experiences, if you are thinking about doing something like this, be prepared to accept what they're saying, and you have the level of empathy that's required. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are struggling with mental health are very quiet and don't come forwards. So another key skill is, when you're doing these sessions, to look for the guys who are maybe, some guys are very vocal and they'll tell you quite openly about their late uncle who committed suicide or things like that, and it's great. That's what we want to have a discussion. But there are people in the room who are very uncomfortable with it, and we sort of stayed behind, had a quick chat with them, put the kettle on, had a cup of tea, and honestly, you would be amazed at what came out of these sort of like after the session experiences. It was quite incredible. Okay, so very important that we got that up and running. We were absolutely flying into this program. Now we were on the ground all over the place. Rachel and I were providing a one-to-one support for the guys who work directly with Vitaly, going to sites, checking up on them. It wasn't a case of, once he's buried and the funerals happen, we'll forget about this. There was a lot of people very, very close to Vitaly. We had to keep this going for a number of weeks until we were absolutely convinced that they were okay with it and they were okay to carry on. And as Rachel says, even now they're still coming back and talking about it. So it's such a tragedy, but we had to sort of go back and think about our company risk assessment. So I rewrote the company risk assessment with a proviso that when I left the company, I was kind of planning my own thing at that time anyhow. I sat with Rachel and we rewrote another workshop. So once you've done the first session with the rollouts and the materials and all the information that you've got, and all the support networks from the Lighthouse Club and all these other great events that we've had, you can't just stop. It cannot just stop there. This is a commitment to the workforce for their working lives. It's the same as looking after their physical health and well-being. You have to commit to this. You can't say, we sent out some cards one time, we got bored with that, then we thought we'd work on, slip, trips and falls or something. It can't be that way. You cannot pick this subject up and put it down. It absolutely has to be all in. And all credit to Rachel for continuing the work, post my time here. But we're still in touch all the time anyway, so we're always sort of doing things together. So what we did was, just before I left, I rewrote the company risk assessment on mental health. And as I was doing it, I'm thinking, I know what's in it, I understand it, but how do we get this to the workforce? This is really tricky. It's really like saying, we've got to send out the health and safety policy once a year and get it, the Olympic science say they've read it. I wanted to make sure that everybody understood this. And how do they do that? So Rachel and I came up with a plan. We explained all of the hazards, like the demands of the job, what the signs of stress are, who's got actual proper control over their own workload. People didn't understand what that meant. Does that mean I can come home, go in at 7:30 and go home at 4? No, it means you can take time out, you can have 5, have a chill time, go and have a break, go and have a glass of water, talk to somebody. You've got more control over your workload than you could ever imagine. To get them to understand what difficult working relationships were. A lot of our guys it's an operative, a machineman, and a labourer. So these 3 guys are like, they're with each other all the time. And sometimes that can be very stressful if you're not working with somebody that you don't get on well with. And lots of people wanted to actually come up and say, actually, I don't mind working in this team, but can we switch around? No problem, we can do that for you. That's dead easy. Being clear of the objectives for the role and understanding organisational change. The organisational change at WM Donald, we're very fortunate. There's not the same kind of thing you might get in a bigger industry. The layers from the managing director to the cleaner are about 5 layers, and they're very clean. Everybody knows who works where, what they do, and there's very rarely a change to that sort of setup. And then the bullying and harassment piece, we just spelled it out in the presentation that we got. And again, all credit to my former colleague here. 170 people out of 190 employees were delivered that presentation on what was in the mental health risk assessment. That's an incredible effort. That was post Craig. I'm now out of the business. Rachel's gone around every work site, set up the sessions. And again, go back to what we were saying earlier on. If we hadn't got that buy-in at the start from the senior team, there's no way Rachel would be on tour doing this presentations. There's just no way. It'd be, you should be doing HR stuff. Why are you not sorting out payroll or whatever these kind of other HR things are? But this was no problem. Get out there, guys, and get it done. And it's really paying the benefits for what we did.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So going back to the challenges with the board, they wanted to actually see tangible evidence. So if you think back to January 2021, we had no activity on mental health. We'd obviously just started to touch on it. We had no apprentices within WM Donald. Our absence was 3.56, which was above industry stats. Our turnover was 30%. And we had 2 mental health first aiders, our ops manager and ops director, who no one, let's face it, is actually going to discuss if they have mental health issues or any personal issues. So then in 2022, we implemented the start of this programme. And then if you fast forward to December 2023, our absence is reduced. Now that was one of the senior team's concern, that we are going to open up that can of worms and people are going to use this mental health as a way of being off work. Turnover reduced to 25% because, again, our employees could see we were supporting them throughout this. 27% of our workforce have actually got 100% attendance, and we celebrated that fact as well. And we now have 25 mental health first aiders. So that is 1 per 10 employees. And for me, I'm going to say 90% of them are actually out and about in site. So they're actually seeing and working with their employees. As Craig touched on, we still have our mental health clinics twice a year, and that will continue. And it's just about keeping it alive, keeping it current, and changing the subject matter. I can't just keep churning out what we did in 2022. So it's always looking at what you can actually put in your presentation. We do a staff survey, and we started that as well in 2022. And we've continued to do that, and we make sure there is direct questions with regards to mental health. And as you can see from the slide, the staff site, the results have been very, very positive. When we started this, I would say it was actually flipped the other way around, and we're saying that we are not doing enough with regards to the stigma of mental health. So 81% of our employees do believe we are supporting them and doing enough with regards to mental health.
And just a quick note on that one, on the absence. If we think about the objective we set to make our places a safe place to talk about mental health, absence is reduced. People are actually talking about mental health in this workplace now, rather than staying at home and saying, I'm going to phone in today because I'm a bit down. They're actually coming into work knowing it's a safe place to talk about it. So I'm convinced that is an absolute result of the information we provided at the time.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So what does the culture look like now, considering where it was in 2021? I do have a CEO on board who are fully bought into and committed to this. The stigma around mental health is gone, and everyone is speaking openly about their mental health and suicide, and that they help that they actually need. our employees are looking out for each other,
Yeah.
you know, and asking advice. Every employee is aware of the support, the network that is out there, and we're still continuing with our monthly newsletter and sending out the monthly Lighthouse newsletter as well. We're still continuing with our engagement days, and we always make sure there's a guest speaker, whether that's a Lighthouse Club, whether it's our occupational health providers. We have mental health first aiders who are capable and they want to do it and they want to help everyone. We are finalists and we're winners in numerous industry awards. You know, this year we actually won wellbeing in the workplace, and that was just with all the hard work that we have done over the last 2 years. And there is a desire from the whole company to keep building upon these successes and drive a lasting industry change, break that stigma.
Absolutely. So just a quick summary of where we've gone through in the last little session there. So mental health is an area of the business that is, without question, best served by both departments, by HSEQ and HR working together. You know, get a shared goal. It does work. You know, sometimes it can be quite difficult. We've got different priorities. There's different things. But if you are going to do mental health, this is the one that does cross over, and you can both contribute to it enormously. If you can get it, you can get the passion and the emotion fired up into your board, you know, to get this thing as the same standing as physical health and well-being. But don't wait until you lose somebody to drive this. Please, you know, try and find the passion within yourself to speak to your board about what you've heard tonight, and then just to get them openly discussing it and get it to move forwards. The safe spaces, for me, I think that's the key to unlocking everything. When people know that their workplace is a safe space to talk about mental health, they're going to enjoy it. And honestly, we've had conversations that we've started off, you know, on a very low note, you know, and thinking, actually, we've just turned that around. We've done some real good today, and it feels good, I can assure you. Start talking openly about suicide. Provide information about it. You know, you never know who is in the room, you know, that might just take heed of it at some point, because you have no idea what anybody's backstory is. Exactly as we didn't with Vitaly, we had no idea that he had suicidal thoughts. Again, we've had some advice from other people saying, remember, you can't save everyone. Yeah, we're gonna have a bloody good try at it. You know, that's it's got to be your mentality when you do it. And if you feel that you need support, I mean, goodness me, just get on LinkedIn, go on the system. There's information everywhere on this that you can do it. And as I said earlier on, quite passionately, it can't just be a hot topic. You can't just dip your toe in the water with this and say, yeah, we'll do mental health today, and then we'll do something else tomorrow. This has got to be on exactly the same footing as physical health and well-being in your business if you want it to succeed. Review what you've already done and assess its effectiveness. You know, so if you've done something, I won't speak ill of some of our clients, but when we go to sites, we see the shiny posters, we see the cards on the table. There's nothing at the back of it. There needs to be a lot more at the back of it. You know, look for innovations, check out best practice. Might not fit in your business, it might, but parts of it might not. That's the job of the HR and HSEQ team, is to find these parts that fit your business, and it'll help to drive it forward. And then, you know, you can't say it enough, measure, and measure again. The staff feedbacks are a really simple, easy way to get the feedback you need. And, you know, we've got our, I can't remember the system you call the clicker, but, you know, you get the information, you can type in questions anonymously. It's just incredible how you do it. Yeah, as I said, you have to accept that you're not going to save everyone, but if you know that you've done everything within your power to do what you possibly can to improve your mental health in your workplaces, then yeah, you'll sleep better at night.
Yeah.
Okay. That ends our PowerPoint presentation, folks. Thank you so much for your time and letting us come along tonight, and for listening. We'll hand back now to Rachel, and we'll happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much to you both for really insightful presentation there. There's not been any questions put into the chat function. People can either type into the chat function if they would like a question read out, or you can come on camera and ask any questions yourself, just whatever you feel most comfortable with.
We have covered a lot. We won't be offended if there aren't any questions.
No.
I've got a quick question. Obviously, you guys, Willie Donald's, are a pretty reasonable sized company, but I know in particular across the construction industry, it's a lot of small or even micro businesses. For a starting point for them, what do you think is key?
I think reaching out, and what I'll say is from today that, if you are starting this journey, reach out. You can contact myself and Craig. I'm not precious what we did. I've shared with other organisations when we started with the newsletter, the toolbox talks that we did, and research what support's out there. I've touched on the Lighthouse Club. For a small donation, they have got the experts there that can help you and support you through this journey. Absolutely. As well. So look at the resource and share best practice. Craig?
Yeah, I would obviously agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think that it's the company that Willie Donald size, Michelle, we put an onus on supporting supply chain. So if you've got a bigger company, support your supply chain, consider them contractors, consider their values at the same time you're considering your own. We were very inclusive in what we did there. It's quite difficult for a small company to do it themselves, but if they look at their client base, they'll get help there.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So there's a couple of people in the chat that are asking quite a similar question, so I'll try and group them together. So somebody else has seen previous experience of mental health first aiders being used quite a lot, but how do you provide support to your mental health first aiders? So again, you're supporting the rest of the team, but how do they get support?
As a collective, we check in with ourselves once a month. We have an open door policy, so they can talk to anybody within WM Donald if they do have any concerns. And they have the Lighthouse Club as well. But we are continually, obviously, talking to ourselves and making sure that our mental health is looked after.
Thank you. Anybody else with any questions? Appreciate it. There's been quite a lot of information shared in the last half an hour or so. So there's another question come in. Men are more prone to suicide. Do you think there are different issues affecting mainly male workforces?
I would say so. In my experience in civil engineering and construction, they don't want to talk about it. And this is why we started this journey at the start. And I now have weekly conversations with individuals who are talking to me about their mental health, their personal issues, their money issues. So you have to start somewhere, that you've opened that door, and you've got to accept that you will probably get an influx once you've started it. I'm not going to say you normalise it, but for me, I think it's great that, I will have, a couple of conversations a week, because they can talk to me. We are talking about mental health. So prepare yourself for that. You will have an influx, and it's how, as a company, you actually deal with that. Going back to the seniors comment, you're going to open up a can of worms, but what can we do to help and support? Because the more that are talking about it, the better.
Okay, thank you. All right, does anybody else have any comments or questions that they would like to put whilst we're here? Okay, no, I think that's probably all the questions for this evening. Again, just want to thank you both for sparing the time and coming along and speaking at our branch event this evening. Extremely worthwhile topic, extremely worthwhile session. We have recorded the session, so if anybody wasn't able to dial in this evening or wants to rewatch some of the information that you've shared, we will make that available in due course. And I'd just like to thank everybody for taking the time to come along and attend the session this evening. Your support's very much appreciated. And our next branch events will be advertised on LinkedIn in the usual channels. So just like to thank everybody for coming along. And oh, we've got another comment there. I'm from a large international oil company. There is so much more we can do, and appreciate your information you shared. So yeah, thank you again.
Thank you.
For the time and the information you've shared. And with that, I will wish everybody a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.